Chapter 40. Thunder and wild tumult, the glare of lightning, the shattering roar of waves leaping mountains high and hissing asunder in midair. To this fierce riot of savage elements let loose a whirling, boisterous dance of death. I woke at last with a convulsive shock. Staggering to my feet, I stood in the black obscurity of my cabin, trying to rally my scattered forces. The electric lamps were extinguished, and the lightning alone illuminated the sepulchral darkness. Frantic shoutings echoed above me on deck. Fiend-like yells that sounded now like triumph, now like despair, and again like menace. The yacht leapt to and fro like a hunted stag amid the furious billows, and every frightful crash of thunder threatened, as it seemed, to split her in twain. The wind howled like a devil in torment. It screamed and moaned and sobbed as though endowed with a sentient body that suffered acutest agony. Anon it rushed downwards with an angry swoop as of wild flapping wings, and at each raging gust I thought the vessel must surely founder. Forgetting everything but immediate personal danger, I tried to open my door. It was locked outside. I was a prisoner. My indignation at this discovery exceeded every other feeling, and beating with both hands on the wooden panels, I called, I shouted, I threatened, I swore, all in vain. Thrown down twice by the topsy-turvy lurching of the yacht, I still kept up a desperate hammering and calling, striving to raise my voice above the distracting pandemonium of noise that seemed to possess the ship from end to end. But all to no purpose, and finally, hoarse and exhausted, I stopped and leaned against the unyielding door to recover breath and strength. The storm appeared to be increasing in force and clamor. The lightning was well nigh incessant, and the clattering thunder followed each flash so instantaneously as to leave no doubt that it was immediately above us. I listened, and presently heard a frenzied cry, "Breakers ahead!" This was followed by peals of discordant laughter. Terrified, I strained my ears for every sound, and all at once some one spoke to me quite closely, as though the very darkness around me had found a tongue. "Breakers ahead! Throughout the world, storm and danger and doom, doom and death, but afterwards, life." A certain intonation in these words filled me with such frantic horror that I fell on my knees in abject misery, and almost prayed to the God that I had through all my life disbelieved in and denied. But I was too mad with fear to find words. The dense blackness, the horrid uproar of the wind and sea, the infuriated and confused shouting, all this was to my mind as though hell itself had broken loose, and I could only kneel dumbly and tremble. Suddenly a swirling sound, as of an approaching monstrous whirlwind, made itself heard above all the rest of the din, a sound that gradually resolved itself into a howling chorus of 1,000 voices sweeping along on the gusty blast. Fierce cries were mingled with the jarring thunder, and I leapt erect as I caught the words of clangorous shout. "I've Satanas! I've!" Rigidly upright, with limbs stiffened for sheer terror, I stood listening. The waves seemed to roar, "I've Santhanas!" The wind shrieked to the thunder. The lightning wrote in its snaky line of fire on the darkness, "I've Santhanas!" My brain swam round and grew full to bursting. I was going mad, raving mad surely, or why should I thus hear distinctly such unmeaning sounds as these? With a sudden access of superhuman force, I threw the whole weight of my body against the door of my cabin in a delirious effort to break it open. It yielded slightly, and I prepared myself for another rush and similar attempt, when all at once it was flung widely back, admitting a stream of pale light, and Lucio, wrapped in heavy shrouding garments, confronting me. "Follow me, Geoffrey Tempest," he said in low, clear tones. "Your time is come." As he spoke, all self-possession deserted me. The terrors of the storm, and now the terrors of his presence, overwhelmed my strength, and I stretched out my hands to him appealingly, unknowing what I did or said. "For God's sake," I began wildly. He silenced me with an imperious gesture. "Spare me your prayers. For God's sake, for your own sake, and for mine. Follow." He moved before me like a black phantom in a pale, strange light surrounding him, and I, dazed and terror-stricken, trod in his step closely, moved, as it seemed, by some volition not my own. till I found myself alone with him in the saloon of the yacht, with the waves hissing up against the windows like live snakes ready to sting. Trembling and scarcely able to stand, I sank on a chair. He turned round and looked at me for a moment meditatively. Then he threw open one of the windows. A huge wave dashed in and scattered its bitter salt spray upon me where I sat. But I heeded nothing. My agonized looks were fixed on him, the being I had so long made the companion of my days. Raising his hands with a gesture of authority, he said, "Back, ye devils of the sea and wind, ye which are not God's elements but my servants, the unrepenting souls of men, lost in the waves or whirled in the hurricane, whichever ye made your destiny, get hence and cease your clamor. This hour is mine." Panic-stricken, I heard. Aghast, I saw the great billows that had shouldered up in myriads against the vessel sink suddenly. The yelling wind dropped, silenced. The yacht glided along with a smooth, even motion, as though on a tranquil inland lake. And almost before I could realize it, the light of the full moon beamed forth brilliantly and fell in broad stream across the floor of the saloon. But in the very cessation of the storm, the words "I Santhanas" trembled, as it were, upwards to my ears from the underworld of the sea, and died away in distance like a parting echo of thunder. Then Lucio faced me, with what a countenance of sublime and awful beauty! "Do you know me now, man, whom my millions of dross have made wretched? Or do you need me to tell you who I am?" My lips moved, but I could not speak. The dim and dreadful thought that was dawning on my mind seemed as yet too frenzied, too outside the boundaries of material sense for mortal utterance. "Be dumb, be motionless, but hear and feel," he continued, "by the supreme power of God, for there is no other power in the world or in any heaven. I control and command you at this moment, your own will being set aside for once as naught. I chose you as one out of millions to learn in this life the lessons that all must learn hereafter. Let every faculty of your intelligence be ready to receive that which I shall impart, and teach it to your fellow men, if you have a conscience, as you have a soul." Again I strove to speak. He seemed so human, so much my friend still, though he had declared himself my enemy. And yet, what was that lambent radiance encircling his brows, that burning glory steadily deepening and flashing from his eyes? "You are one of the world's fortunate men," he went on, surveying me straightly and piteously. "So at least this world judges you, because you can buy its goodwill. But the forces that govern all worlds do not judge you by such a standard. You cannot buy their goodwill, though all the churches should offer to sell it to you. They regard you as you are, stripped, soul naked, not as you seem. They behold in you a shameless egotist, persistently engaged in defacing their divine image of immortality, and for that sin there is no excuse and no escape but punishment. Whosoever prefers self to God, and in the arrogance of that self presumes to doubt and deny God, invites another power to compass his destinies, the power of evil, made evil and kept evil by the disobedience and wickedness of man alone. That power whom mortals call Satan, Prince of Darkness, but whom once the angels knew as Lucifer, Prince of Light." He broke off, paused, and in his flaming regard fell full upon me. "Do you know me now?" I sat, a rigid figure of fear, dumbly staring. Was this man, for a seen man, mad that he should thus hint at a thing too wild and terrible for speech? "If you do not know me, if you do not feel in your convicted soul that you are aware of me, it is because you do not know. Thus I do come upon men, when they rejoice in their wilful self-blindness and vanity. Thus I do become their constant companion, humoring them in such vices as they best love. Thus do I take on the shape that pleases them, and fit myself to their humors. They make me what I am. They mold my very form to the fashion of their flitting time. Through all their changing and repeating eras, they have found strange names and titles for me, and their creeds and churches have made a monster of me, as though imagination could compass any worse monster than the devil in man." Frozen and mute I heard the dead silence, and his resonant voice vibrating through it seemed more terrific than the wildest storm. You, God's work, endowed as every conscious atom of his creation is endowed with the infinite germ of immortality, you, absorbed in the gathering together of such perishable trash as you conceive good for yourself on this planet, you dare, in the punny reach of your immortal intelligence, to dispute and question the everlasting things invisible. You, by the Creator's will, are permitted to see the natural universe, but in mercy to you, the veil is drawn across the supernatural. For such things as exist there would break your punny earth brain as a frail shell is broken by a passing wheel. And because you cannot see, you doubt. You doubt not only the surpassing love and wisdom that keeps you in ignorance till you shall be strong enough to bear such full knowledge, but you doubt the very fact of such another universe itself. Arrogant fool, your hours are counted by supernatural time. Your days are compassed by supernatural law. Your every thought, word, deed, and look must go to make up the essence and shape of your being in supernatural life hereafter. And what you have being in your soul here must and shall be the aspect of your soul there. That law knows no changing. The lights about his face deepened. He went on in clear accents that vibrated with the strangest music. Men make their own choice and form their own futures, he said, and never let them dare say they are not free to choose. From the uttermost reaches of high heaven, the Spirit of God descended to them as man. From the uttermost depths of lowest hell, the spirit of rebellion, come, equally as man. But the God in man was rejected and slain. The devil in man, live on, forever accepted and adored. Man's choice is not God's or mine. Were this self-seeking human race once to reject me utterly, I should exist no more as I am, nor would they exist who are with me. Listen while I trace your career. It is a copy of the lives of many men, and judge how little power of heaven can have to do with you, how much the powers of hell. I shuddered involuntarily. Dimly I began to realize the awful nature of this earthly interview. You, Geoffrey Tempest, are a man in whom a thought of God was once implanted, that subtle fire of note of music out of heaven called genius. So great a gift is rarely bestowed on any mortal, and woe betide him who, having received it, holds it as of mere personal value, to be used for self and not for God. Divine law moved you gently in the right path of study, the path of suffering, of disappointment, of self-denial and poverty, for only by these things is humanity made noble and trained in the ways of perfection. Through pain and enduring labor the soul is armed for battle and strengthened for conquest, for it is more difficult to bear a victory well than to endure many buffetings of war. But you resented heaven's goodwill towards you. The valley of humiliation suited you not at all. Poverty maddened you. Starvation sickened you. Yet poverty is better than arrogant wealth, and starvation is healthier than self-indulgence. You could not wait. Your own troubles seemed to you enormous, your own efforts laudable and marvelous. The troubles and efforts of others were nothing to you. You were ready to curse God and die. Compassionating yourself, admiring yourself, and none other, with a heart full of bitterness and a mouth full of cursing, you were eager to make quick havoc of both your genius and your soul. For this cause your millions of money came, and so did I. Standing now full height, he confronted me. His eyes were less brilliant, but they reflected in their dark splendor a passionate scorn and sorrow. "Oh, fool! In my very coming I warned you. On the very day we met I told you I was not as I seemed. God's elements crashed a menace when we made our compact of friendship. And when I saw the faint last struggle of the not quite torpid soul in you to resist and distrust me, did I not urge you to let that better instinct have its way? You, jester with the supernatural, you, base scoffer at Christ, 1,000 hints have been given you, 1,000 chances of doing such good as must have forced me to leave you, as would have brought me a welcome respite from sorrow, a moment's cessation of torture. His brows contracted in a somber frown. He was silent a moment. Then he resumed. Now learn from me the weaving of the web you so willingly became entangled in. Your millions of money were mine. The man that left you heir to them was a wretched miser, evil to the soul's core. By virtue of his own deeds, he and his dross were mine, and maddened by the sheer accumulation of world's wealth, he slew himself in a fit of frenzy. He lives again in a new and much more realistic phase of existence, and knows the actual value of mankind's cash payments. This you have yet to learn. He advanced a step or two, fixing his eyes more steadily upon me.